Today I'm going to be trying another crazy AI challenge. A while ago, the StarCraft EVO Complete mod was released, allowing players to play with Brood War units against StarCraft 2 units. Normal people would use this to play really cool 1v1 games and even host some tournaments. I, however, will be trying to use the Brood War unit set to try and beat 7 elite SC2 AIs. This challenge is going to be incredibly difficult as I'll be missing some tools that I typically use a lot in these challenges, such as Liberators. This game is going to be epic. Let's begin. Alright, here we go. The map is going to be Abyss, and here we have our 7 elite SC2 AIs. I do want to give a shout out to this mod, because I think this mod is absolutely freaking awesome. I already made a couple of videos before on this mod. In particular, one that I remember where I played Brood War Mech against StarCraft 2 Protoss, which was an absolutely fantastic experiment. But anyway, let's focus on the challenge at the hand here. So first of all, I do wonder what you guys think would be the biggest problem and the biggest advantage playing with the Brood War races, especially Brood War Terran in this case, against the StarCraft 2 AI. Because the first thing that I thought of was missing the Liberator, like I mentioned in the intro. The Liberator is honestly probably a little bit of an overpowered tool against these AI challenges. The AI absolutely hates standing in Liberator circles unless they have an Omega army. So things that you can do is, for example, be a little bit greedy. You can cheese one of your AI neighbors as long as you have a Liberator in time for the first wave. Because the first wave tends to be so small that they don't usually walk through a Liberator zone. But if they would kill you. They don't know that, right? So that is their problem there. But another thing that you could think of, for example, is not having planetaries. Planetary, obviously, really useful. In particular against Zerg, I have to admit. I remember against... I could be wrong about this, but I think when I played with SC2 Terran against Terran and Protoss AIs, I didn't actually use planetaries that much. Now, at this point, I was measuring my wall for the future, and this is because I don't have planetaries, so I'm gonna have to make an extra thick wall. The building placement was not actually that simple, because you want to have a lot of turrets, and in particular, I'm gonna need some bunkers as well, which take up a lot of space, as you guys know. Brood War bunkers and SC2 bunkers both take up a very decent amount of space, so I was trying to measure being able to get my tanks out on the inside if I was going to make the factory in the wall, as well as be able to make a bunker without blocking all of my stuff. Like, that was going to be quite difficult. There you can see there's a lot of Zerg players spawning. I'm pretty sure I set the AIs as random, right? So, or well, they were put by random by default. So we have a lot of Zerg players now, we can already see. It's actually one advantage of playing against the elite AI is that they always scout you, so you can tell exactly what races your opponents are. This also made me think that the other 3 AIs were probably non-Zerg, because otherwise they would have scouted already. But there I saw a Zergling, so we are going to be going up against what seems to be 5 Zergs, 1 Protoss, and 1 unknown race as of this moment. I'm going to make the factory in the wall as well. At this point, I already had a bunch of attempts under my belt. I was also streaming all of these on Twitch, by the way. I'll probably do another one of these, and if you guys want to, see me fail a bunch of attempts live, make sure to follow me on Twitch. But I already had a couple of attempts under my belt at this point, and I knew how I wanted to place my buildings. I was even gonna consider making multiple bunkers here. Now, that is something that you would never do with the StarCraft 2 races, because like I said, there's nothing more important than getting the Liberator out, as well as the siege tanks, of course. But here I don't have the Liberators. There's nothing that I can make from the starport that's going to be useful right away. So I did really have to make an extra bunker, and that's what I'm going to do now. I wasn't sure where I was going to place it. I'm going to place it in the bottom here, so I'm not going to block my own siege tank later. And I'm not quite sure if I mentioned it already, but keep in mind you have to research freaking siege mode when you play Brood War Terran. For the ones that have never played Brood War, yeah, you had to upgrade that. In fact, I think in Wings of Liberty, you also have to upgrade it still, right? I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure Wings of Liberty, you still have to upgrade your siege mode as well. That makes me wonder why they changed that. Because if you think about it, that is a pretty freaking drastic change. Right? Like, imagine like any unit that has a super strong upgrade, and at some point they just decide, oh yeah, right now you start with that, by the way. Like, imagine if all your bio units suddenly start with Stib or whatever, so you don't have to upgrade that anymore. That's a pretty crazy change. Now, anyway, this was wave number 1. I had a lot of Bailings that scared me for a second, but the AI with Bailings is not usually perfect. I mean, they could have gone on that depot over there and that would have been a little painful, but they didn't, went for the factory. AI realized they weren't going to do enough damage and they backed off. Now my siege mode finished, I have 2 bunkers. Oh, by the way, Brood War siege tanks are amazingly strong. I know I've been talking about the downsides, but Brood War tanks are so good. So these are going to be doing an absolutely massive amount of damage. Now, there's another part of this that's going to be quite important. And this is something that I know from my, at this point, very long experience of doing these AI challenges. And there's a couple tricks you can do. On some maps, your neighbor spawns close enough that you can sometimes bait them to keep a couple units at home, trying to kill the building that you built too close. So what I'm trying to do here, you might have noticed my depot placement. I'm trying to build them on all the extremes of my base so that maybe I can bait like a couple Ravagers, or it may sometimes even a whole army staying at home, just trying to kill that depot because they see the depot as a threat. They want to stay at home. So this is a thing you can use to bait them later on. Now you would think if you don't have Liberators, if you're not going to make battle cruisers, which I do think are significantly worse in Brood War, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think PCs are better in StarCraft 2, which sounds weird to some of you guys because PCs are not that good to begin with. But anyway, I'm not going to be able to kill those units that I'm baiting with a Liberator, so what's really the point? But there is a unit that Brood War Terran has that is absolutely fantastic, especially against Zerg. And that is the Science Vessel. You guys might have forgotten about that by now. The Science Vessel is basically the Brood War version of the Raven. But it has a couple of abilities that are super freaking cool. And if I think about it right now, the Science Vessel might be one of the units that I would actually like to see, you know, to have in StarCraft 2, because it is freaking awesome. The Science Vessel has a defensive matrix. It's an ability you can put on one unit and it's gonna absorb, I think it's 300 damage. I think I see this later on this game. It's gonna absorb 300 damage and all hits incoming just do 1. So you know a weakness of mech, for example, is just that sometimes they just jump on top of you and you're not quite ready. In that case, you could use the defensive matrix or deep matrix on the front units and it's gonna survive a long time, and it's a really cool ability. You also have Irradiate, which is kind of like, it's kind of like a parasitic bomb that you can put on bio units instead of on air units. So it's going to stick to the target and do splash damage around it. And you can only imagine how good this is against Zerg. Like, imagine doing it on an enormous swell of Zerglings or something like that, right? Now, if you can notice at my wall now, this is what I was talking about before. I wanted to have an extra layer of wall. In particular, I didn't want to lose this factory either. It's happened to me a couple times before that at some point they break the factory. The health on that is not super high. So now I'm going to try to wall off the front with about 5 engineering bays. I was experimenting with making Goliaths a little faster. That's another unit that Brood War Terran has. It's, I guess you can see it as a mini version of the Thor if you've never seen it before. I know it's a very iconic unit, so I do expect most of you to have heard of the Goliath at least, but maybe you haven't. It's just like a mini Thor. It's like a pretty mobile, particular anti-air unit. It shoots ground as well, similar to the Thor, but it is a little bit better against air, and that's usually what it's used for. Goliath, for example, would be used to counter mass carriers. They have an upgrade that gives them a very big anti-air range. I think it was rebalanced in this mod. Here I'm gonna need one of you guys to correct me because I'm not 100% sure. But I thought in Brood War the anti-air upgrade was freaking insane. Like, it gave you 3 or 4 extra range or something. And here it only gives 2. Now, it could totally be the case that in Brood War it also gives 2 just because the game looks different. It feels like it's a lot more. But I really felt like in Brood War it gives an absolutely massive range increase. And here it was just 2, which is still pretty good, of course. Now here I'm gonna upgrade that already. The AI does tend, this is actually a very cool thing, by the way. The AIs make different units against my Brood War race than against my StarCraft 2 race. Here you can see exactly what I was talking about. I built that depot really close and these turrets really close to the opponent's bases. So it's not just going to keep a couple of their units at home, potentially during big waves, but it's also going to be letting me kill some of their stuff, right? Like, I can siege a tank a little bit closer and it's going to be able to shoot at the Ravager. Look how much damage that tank does, by the way. Very powerful there. And this is a very nice setup I have. Now, I have a couple of the turrets at the front as well. Those turrets don't seem to be too useful besides the tanking. I think, in fact, maybe I could have made even more... what's it called? Even more engineering base instead of the turrets. Judging by how this fight went, I think a couple engineering base could be useful. Now, here you can see You might have thought I already had a really good setup and I wasn't going to be broken easily, but they still broke through my wall pretty easily, and they already killed a couple tanks as well. Similar to in the Zerg vs AI challenge that I did recently, or was it that one? It might have been another AI challenge. The fungal growth is actually the thing doing the most damage. Like, the fungal growth is extremely annoying. It just keeps hitting like freaking 8 siege tanks and doing the full amount of damage to them. Now, here you can see the risks of me building the buildings a little too close to the opponent. Like, the top side of my natural is getting owned a little bit. Like, I think I already lost a tank there. Maybe I didn't siege it there yet. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I lost a tank there. I lost a couple turrets as well. Now, my tanks, hopefully I can evacuate these to a little bit of a safer spot now. I know my wall has looked a little bit ridiculous, like my tank spawning out on the outside, but I just want to make sure that I have a really thick wall. This is where my mind was blown. I'm not quite sure if you guys noticed what happened there, but something happened that I completely forgot about. And that is that getting +2 vehicle weapons requires a science facility in Brood War, which is the building that enables science vessels, if you guys didn't know that. And I completely forgot about that. I was like, I probably am not going to need armor upgrades. If I need armor, think about it this way. If I get to the point where I need armor upgrades and my units are getting hit, I'm probably dead already. Like, these tanks are, ideally they never get hit, right? But if they do, then I'm probably already screwed. So I don't think I needed armor upgrades, but getting a science facility early to get the extra upgrade for the attack, I wasn't quite sure about. I am going to go towards a science facility because it's an endgame unit that I will definitely need. Like, this map, look at my base count, right? I'm only going to have 2 bases, and there is no chance I'm going to be able to get a 3rd base before it's mined out. That's one reason. You guys might have wondered why I chose this map, by the way, because there's so little bases that it's going to be freaking hard. But I think one downside of Brood War Terran is that it's just hard to go out and expand, because I don't really want to make too many units besides siege tanks. I want to get into science vessels later and Goliaths for the anti-air. But making mobile units that I can expand with is going to be very painful. Now, this army that they have looks very strong, but this is where you can see the power of the Brood War siege tank, right? My supply is not even that high. Look at that fungal. Oh, it hurts to watch. All these tanks are instantly yellow, but the tanks are so freaking strong that even on a low supply, they can absolutely pop off. Now, this is something that someone in my chat noticed as I was playing this. I didn't even really pay attention to this, but there are so little collisions on the siege tanks that my SCVs are actually getting in the middle of this and repairing this stuff. You guys noticed that? Like, that is absolutely crazy. First of all, the repair is very, very fast, it seems like. And there seems to be almost no collisions, so my SCVs can actually get in between the siege tanks, even though they are ridiculously clumped in this super small natural, and repair them up, which is pretty freaking awesome. Now, my wall does get broken every single time, and I keep losing a couple tanks, which is hard. Now, one reason, by the way, if you guys are wondering why the supply is that low, it's not just that my supply is actually low, which it is, but this might blow your mind if you forgot about this. Brood War tanks are only 2 supply. Brood War tanks are amazingly strong, and yet they are only 2 supply. If you guys have watched both Brood War and StarCraft 2 eSport, at some point you might have wondered, why are these mech armies in Brood War so freaking enormous and so strong? Typically, Protoss needs multiple waves of a maxed army to kill one mech army by the Terran. Well, that is one big reason. Brood War tanks are only 2 supply. So this army in StarCraft 2 would probably already be like 160 supply or something. Like, there's so many freaking siege tanks that I have. What is this, like 30 tanks or something? That would be 90 supply by itself, right? Like, that is pretty freaking crazy. And I didn't even really think about it until this moment where I realized how little supply I had for how enormous my army was. Now, I really think my natural is starting to look a little bit ridiculous. One thing that I also... Guys, by the way, this is a unit that I wonder if any of you thought of when I asked the question at the start. Like, what unit do you think I'm going to be missing here? There's another unit that I am going to give more credit to in my StarCraft 2 Terran runs after this one that I didn't think of, and that is the Viking. The Viking is such a good anti-air in these challenges because of its range. I know Vikings tend to be a little flimsy. They die pretty fast, and that's annoying. Absolutely brutal. Delicious to watch fight, by the way. With how fast everything dies to the siege tanks. But the Viking is such a good anti-air because you can keep it safe over your turrets and tanks. The Brood War Terran's unit set doesn't really have something like that. Like the Goliaths, they're very awkward, especially in this position, because my tanks are so clumped. I cannot really easily have my Goliaths out front. And there's another very massive benefit that you guys are, trust me, you're gonna witness this later and you might cry when you see it. And it's that Goliaths, they're gonna take splash damage from my own siege tanks, and they will just get one-shot because the tanks are that strong. If we fight against, let's say, a lot of melee units, maybe like a billion Zerglings and Zealots, the Goliaths are probably gonna die if they're out in front dealing with some kind of air threat. Let's say there's a carrier and I want to get, well, maybe not carrier because then I can kill the interceptors, but let's say it's Void Rays or their Liberators or whatever. I put my Goliath to the front. If the Zealots or Zerglings get to my Goliaths will die to siege tank fire. And then there's two units that are going to be even worse. You guys probably already thought of it. The Brute Lord and the Swarm Host. If Brutelings are launched at my Goliaths, they will get one-tapped by siege tanks. And that's where I really wish that I had Vikings. A unit that I could build instead is perhaps the Wraith. I guess that is kind of the Viking equivalent in the Brood War unit set, but also not really, right? I could have gone for a Valkyrie as well. I feel like Valkyries probably be a little too expensive, and Wraiths probably too expensive for the cost. Like a Wraith, it's kind of like a very flimsy plane that's fast and can cloak, but AIs never really have problems with detection. Unless you have a non-stop detection sniper with cloak on all your units. For example, the old Mothership, right? The old Mothership was absolutely fantastic against AI challenges, but like a single flimsy plane with cloak, I mean, they're gonna fungal it instantly. It's gonna die right away. It's gonna have to get up close and personal. That's not gonna do the trick. There goes the science facility, finally gonna start building that. I thought I built the starport before, but I guess I decided not to in favor of getting some more units because I was running a little bit dry. But a Valkyrie, that's probably the one thing that I could have built that maybe would have been good as well, but then I would have had to get into the starport tech a little earlier, which I'm not quite sure I wanted to do. Now there's our first Brute Lord, and that is absolutely terrifying. Notice how my Goliaths are really low HP. Somehow that tank seemed to fire after it died. My Goliaths is gone already. And there's another couple of Brute Lords out here. Now I do have more Goliaths, but this is where we're gonna run into the trouble of not having space. Now the only thing that we can do here, guys, is just try to kill their ground army as fast as possible. This is one thing about the AI that can save your life sometimes, and is that the AI, it sees their army as a whole. I think I explained this as well in my recent challenge where I played against 10 elite AI with SC2 Zerg, and it's that if they attack you with a certain army, sometimes they'll keep a unit alive that can technically kill your entire army. For example, an air unit when you don't have any anti-air, right? But the AIs tend to see their army as a whole. And if their entire ground army disappears, they tend to disengage because their system thinks, okay, our army's tiny, we can't possibly beat this, let's retreat, right? So the one thing you can do to save your life in those cases is just target the ground army and kill it as fast as possible. And here, I have to admit, guys, I know the Goliaths are iconic. I really wasn't sure about making these. I think the Goliaths probably would have been very good against carriers, for example, or Protoss Air, maybe even Terran Air, not quite sure. It does have good range. But in the end, maybe I should have actually gone for the Valkyries just because of the air. Like, they just fly. They are not going to get absolutely ravaged by my own siege tanks. I think even though the Valkyrie probably doesn't have infinite range, I should be able to bait units over my turrets anyway. Biggest problem would still be fungal, because that would mean that my army is going to be super slow. Now here, this is going to be a funny moment in the game, because you're going to see a lot of workers dying for free. This is a good sign for me, because that means they're mining out. It's also a bad sign for me, because it means I'm mining out. And the great part about this is that I can tell you guys that this really is not anywhere near the end. Like, this is... Like, this game is gonna blow your mind away then. Like, it's freaking crazy. Now, I'm still only at 132 supply. Like, it's 18 minutes in. I've mined out all of my bases, and yet I'm only at 132 supply. I know that is partially because the tanks don't really take a lot of supply, but I've also just... Look at my natural, by the way. I'm not sure if you guys saw it right there. It was only 4 mineral patches left, only 8 workers still mining, so my army is really never gonna get that massive. Now, I do like when I do commentary like this, that I tend to give myself ideas. Now watch this, guys. The first irradiate. There we go. Look at that spell. You guys could see it quickly. Just do splash damage to everything around it, and it sticks on the unit. Like, it is so good against Zerg units, and this is exactly the unit I need to do damage there. Those infestors probably gonna die as well, which is really nice. And what I was gonna say is that when I do commentary like this, I also learn, because I talk to you guys about my ideas, and I kind of give myself new ideas. I definitely think next time I'm gonna skip the Goliaths and probably just go for a second starport and get Valkyrie Science Vessel. Now, this is really the best counter to the Brute Lords we have. That one Irradiate is doing damage to a bunch of Brute Lords, but it is 6 of them. I didn't even realize it was that many Brute Lords. Now, look at this, guys. My Sig Segs are going to do so much damage to my own units, and I am completely out of energy. If I had the Defensive Matrix, I could have tried to use it on one of my Goliaths and move forward, and this is really painful, but I am forced to unsiege, because if I wouldn't unsiege, my tanks would kill my Goliaths and my other tanks, so I had to go for this. Now, luckily, there's not another ground army following up to attack this, but this was extremely painful. We are pretty much mined out now, and we have only 112 supply. There is barely enough money to repair, and I'm not going to be able to build anything else. Now, this is going to be pretty much the final army. If I look at my money, I think I should be able to repair and nothing more. I could make another science vessel. That's the best possible thing that I could do with my remaining resources, because it's an energy unit. It's going to regain energy over time, right? But maybe just going for repair is probably smarter. So I'm going to have 6 science vessels. I might have started another one. Yeah, okay. So I did start another one. I went up for 7. Here I'm going to cancel it because I do indeed want these repairs. And that's going to be the last money that I'll have in this game. I have this army. I would say it is 6 vessels. It's probably not that many Goliaths. How many Goliaths would I have? Maybe like 8 or so. And I want to guess maybe like 25 siege tanks or something ridiculous. Now, here we're going to kill a couple of corruptors, which is really nice. Now, the Irradiate really is going to be absolutely key. I did also have another upgrade for the science vessel, which is the EMP. EMP, I mean, it's just like StarCraft 2 EMP, right? From the Ghost, in case you guys don't know. It's really pretty simple. That's where it came from. That's also, just as a side note, I do enjoy getting sidetracked sometimes. That's why some people have suggested getting it on the Raven, because in Brood War it is on a science vessel, which is actually pretty cool. The Ghost had completely different abilities in Brood War. But anyway, these science vessels are going to be super useful with the Defensive Matrix and the Irradiate. Especially, look at those. So many Hydras are going to die to that. I think, even though it doesn't look like it doesn't do that much damage, it deals damage until the unit is dead, or until it deals like 300 damage or something ridiculous like that. So Zerg units are going to suffer. Now, I could also irradiate the queens, but I really would way rather just, you know, kill all of the Zerg armies. Now, what's worrying about this, guys, is you might have felt like that was the final attack. But if you look at the army that Orange has over here, you'll probably realize that all of them are going to have an army like that. At this point, I wasn't entirely sure until I saw how much there was around here. I think my opponents probably have a combined, after losing the workers, maybe about 700 supply, 600, 700 supply. Now, I have really good tools to deal with it. I have a little bit of anti-air only. That is the most worrying part by far. Like the Goliaths, they, you know, so far they haven't delivered that much. They did manage to kill the Brood Lords, which is really nice. But they do only have 1 upgrade. I can't believe I wasn't able to get more upgrades, by the way. Like, that's freaking crazy. Like, I could have made 1 less science, or actually 2 less science vessels to get +2 attack. Would that have been worth it? I don't know. Like, these science vessels are absolutely MVP right now. But we're gonna have to take gold tier fights over and over and be really, really careful if we're gonna want to win this one. Now, just if you guys have never heard of this trick before, it's actually very cool. It's a very common trick in Brood War. You can irradiate your own science vessel and then fly over a mineral line, killing the drones. Like, that's also a very cool technique here. I didn't really think it was appropriate to fly over a bunch of Hydras and Queens and stuff. Defensive Queens also not something that they have in Brood War. They have Queens, but it's a completely different unit. It's basically like a Zerg Raven. Now, there I saw a pretty big tank army, and I really wasn't happy seeing that, because I cannot really attack into that very easily. The only thing I can really do... Now, this was a very nice set of pickles, but I got fungal parasitic bomb at the same time. And keep in mind, guys, I literally have 0 resources to repair. I have gas. I don't have a single mineral. I will not have another repair for the rest of this game. But that army I just can't easily attack into. I could try to do a defensive matrix, but it also would be pretty risky. Now, what my plan is here is just to start slowly eliminating the AIs one by one. But I want to be very, very careful here. Now, here I see a bunch of Ultralisks, which is really scary. I use the Irradiate, and luckily for me, siege tanks are incredibly strong, and we should be able... Oh, I was going to say, we should be able to beat this without losing a unit, but we did lose one tank there. And the fungal hit our science vessels. I know these things seem really small, guys, but any damage I take, like, keep in mind, some of these units are yellow HP already, and this is our final army, like 0 repairs. So this is incredibly, incredibly scary. And I'm gonna siege my tanks forward very, very slowly. I need to be very careful with my Goliaths as well. And there's another couple mechanics that you guys are going to have to be careful for later. You're going to see. And here is one of the scariest things. That is a Brute Lord. And the Brute Lord is probably... There I clutched it with a defensive matrix. It's probably going to kill a couple of our units. Because every time a Brute Lord shoots... I think I saw at least one more in the back there. Hope it's not much more than that. Every time it shoots, my tanks are going to fire. The Brutelings will probably kill one of the units. There I managed to save the tank with the defensive matrix. That's what it looks like. That green effect right there. I think my tanks were about to friendly fire my tank to death. They didn't because of the defensive matrix. That's massive. So now I see the Zerg still has a couple queens in the main base, which is really annoying. I'm being so careful here looking at the back all the time because... if they pounce on top of those tanks without the rest of my army being there, we could be in a massive amount of trouble. Now, this seems like the best way to do it. I'm just going to keep irradiating their stuff, especially the Brute Lords. I really want the Brute Lords to die. The Brute Lords are so dangerous and they give me so much panic. I really want them to freaking die. Now, here I'm going to get a queen pretty easily. That is nice. But it's so annoying that they have extra... What they do is they build extra hatcheries in their main base, as you can see, right? So they make a queen for every hatchery, which means that all the Zerg players, which in this game is a lot of them, I think it's actually 5 of them. Was it 5? I think it's 5 Zergs, right? They have random queens with transfuses, so I'm gonna have to keep irradiating the Brute Lord to actually kill it, which is super annoying because that takes so much energy. Now, obviously, we are gonna be able to replenish it, but if we get pounced on now by all of the armies, then we're not gonna have that much energy. I think I only have 1 D-Matrix available. Now, I'm using my Goliaths to clean up the base. Ideally, I would use my siege tanks, but I really just wanted to be careful to not be pounced on. At this point, I got... Well, I wouldn't call it impatient. It was just going way too slow, and I was actually... Which is really, really frustrating. I was losing units to the Brutelings of the hatcheries. Not even from the Brute Lords, but literally the Brutelings from the hatcheries are painful enough that they could kill my Goliaths. Now, if you look at the minimap, guys, I see an army moving. I see the green army moving, and here a lot of the armies are gonna appear, and this looks like we are about to get forked. But I do have the defensive matrix, which is going to save my tanks here. I'm also gonna use a matrix on those front Goliaths. So my tanks are doing an amazing job tanking because of the defensive matrix. The ones on the right side survived. The Goliaths on the left side are also not taking any damage. They're surviving. They did so much damage to it that one of the D-Matrix actually ended. But we do manage to fend off the attack. But if you look at what we have left, guys, it is very, very little. I have 3 Goliaths on low HP. I have 2 science vessels left. And I have all of these tanks. Now, that one remaining Brute Lord is so freaking scary to me. Here, I found out something very painful. You guys noticed that those spines did a decent amount of damage, so I didn't really remember this myself. But what happened is that unsieged tanks are so much worse in Brute War than the sieged tanks, I noticed. Like, they attack very slow. So even against the Brutelings, you might notice how slow they die. I didn't actually realize how weak the unsieged tanks were. Like, in Brute War, you actually were supposed to use the tanks as if they were siege tanks and siege them. And unsiege, they're not that good. In StarCraft 2, oh, that's going to be very painful there. Stuff like that, exactly. In StarCraft 2, you can actually kite forward with unsieged tanks relatively easily. If you have a lot of them, if you're very strong, they fight very fast. In fact, I think single target DPS is actually higher on an unsieged tanks. But in Brute War, the siege tanks do an incredible amount of damage, like freaking crazy amounts of damage, and the unsieged tanks kill things very slowly. So for the rest of this game, I have to balance sieging my tanks and killing stuff fast, especially if there's units around, of course, and unsieging my tanks and making sure I don't get absolutely annihilated by Brute Lords from all these buildings, all these freaking, oh man, these remaining Brute Lords that are hiding in downtown. I know that blue lost a Brute Lord earlier, And I think that might have been the last one. At least I was really hoping so. Now, at this point, I have 2 Goliaths left. I have to be really careful with those because they are pretty much my last anti-air. I just lost another Goliath to that freaking spine hiding on the right side. And it's a really hard balance because if I sieged my tanks there, I would have killed the spine. But maybe, they do so much damage that maybe I also would have killed another building, spawning Brootlings, which then hug my units and killing one of my units with the siege tanks, which is very, very annoying. Now, this AI surrendered, so we can move on to the next one. My army count is 1 Goliath, 17 siege tanks, and 2 science vessels, giving us a beautiful 40 supply. Now, at this point, I'm flying my command centers around, and everything that can be lifted, really, just so I can see where the remaining armies are. At this point, I know that they do still have units. I'm just not quite sure where they're hiding. You're going to see later on, you'll actually be surprised at what they still have. Like, it's freaking annoying, okay? Like, I wish they would just get it over with and attack me with everything, and then we see, okay, I win the fight. You know, now I can win the game, but sadly for me, it is not going to be that simple. So what I'm going to try to do from this point on is click my Goliath on a tank in the back of my army. There's 4 Zealots. Luckily, those have 1-1 upgrades, by the way. I'm not quite sure if I mentioned it before or if you guys noticed, but a lot of the Zerg armies that I battled against had freaking 3-3 upgrades, and I only have 1-1. So their units were incredibly strong. I was very happy to see that those Zealots only had 1-1 instead of 3-3 as well, because that guy, I can guarantee you, he's gonna have a lot more units later on. Now, that is another spine crawler. Even there, the spine was red HP. I was like, we're definitely gonna kill that spine before it hits us, but it still hit us. Oh man, I'm getting like a little panicky seeing how freaking low HP these units are as well. Now, we have at least dealt with the bottom right 2 players here. Like, yellow is probably about to tap out, and we've gotten pink as well. From what we've seen so far, we can guarantee that every Zerg left has at least 2 Queens with Transfuses. I know the orange Zerg has at least 1 Ultralisk as well, and we know that the purple Protoss has at least 4 Zealots. So that army we should be able to deal with in one big fight. If it's much more than that, it's gonna get very scary. If there's maybe 2 Broodlords hiding, like air would be the scariest thing out of everything. If you're wondering, by the way, how I could possibly deal with like a Void Ray at this point, it is actually the defensive matrix. The 1 Goliath I have, plus a defensive matrix, should be able to kill 1 Void Ray. It would actually be surprisingly close. Because a Void Ray, if you know how a Void Ray deals damage, it has a lot of ticks, right? Like the damage, it's 1 beam, so it's kind of hard to see. But it does keep ticking over and over, so it attacks pretty fast. So even though it absorbs damage, it would still do a significant amount of damage. Now, for some reason, I'm not quite sure what I saw. I felt like this Terran actually didn't have anything. Maybe it's because I killed the final Ravens, or because I saw the final Ravens. Now, here are 4 Zealots showing up. I'm just going to make sure to kite them, and we don't take damage from those, luckily. Now, I looked at his base here, and I was like, what the hell? He has money? Why does he have money? This is what I was like, oh god, they have a lot of money, don't they? They're just being weird in spending it. Now I'm just gonna do my best and trying to kite away from it. That tank is red HP. I'm gonna be very, very careful with the kiting. I also never really want to siege my tanks reactively, because if you ever make a misjudgment, you siege a little bit too late, your tanks fire when the Zealots are on your tanks, boom, 2 or 3 tanks are gonna die to the splash damage instantly, right? So you have to be very careful. Now, we did see another 3 Zealots being warped in. We're gonna have to do our best to kite those, make sure we don't lose any. I think it should be okay. We take 1 swipe there. Gonna use my science vessel to check the base a little bit for any hidden units. Now, what is nice about the Terran base is that I could technically siege it, but I'm still so scared from like a Broodling showing up from the bottom neighbor. Like, blue might have a Broodlord left because blue was the Broodlord guy, and I do not want to die to 1 freaking Broodlord shooting my units. Like, I know there's still at least a couple units out here on this field, and my army is very small, it's very low HP, it's very poorly upgraded, so for that reason I want to be extremely careful. Now, if you want to eliminate an AI, the easiest way to do it is just to kill the command center, the main building, and that's when they surrender. Now, here I noticed something weird. So, as soon as I accepted the surrender, right, the Protoss player started warping in units. But what I didn't get is that he warped in both mineral and gas units, which must mean that the green player So if an AI surrenders, they share their resources to the teammates, right? But since the purple AI warped in both mineral and gas units, that must mean that green had enough resources to build stuff. I kind of assumed if they're not building a single thing, they would not have enough resources to build anything at all. I guess it's theoretically possible that one of them gave 1,000,000 minerals and one of them gave 1,000,000 gas, but even that wouldn't really make sense because then wouldn't that AI have made mineral-only units? So at this point I was considering a new tactic since it didn't seem to work that way. Maybe I would just not accept the surrender of the AI and just accept them all at once. That would also be a pretty smart tactic, I think. Now here, I wasn't sure if we killed all of the units, and I was very right to siege here because we didn't. There we go. It's actually hilarious how strong the tanks are siege compared to not siege. So here I was like, okay, we've killed everything, right? No, I see another warp in. Okay, we've killed everything, right? No, there's an Archon. There's an Immortal. Like, how? Where does all this stuff come from? This guy, if he made all of those units at once, he would have a pretty freaking beastly army that could have killed all of us at once. But it also scares me because that means that these other AIs that have not shown me a lot of units could also have a similar army to that. Maybe the value of... what was the value of all those units this Protoss... the value of all these units, sorry, that this Protoss player has made since we thought he was kind of dead. It has to be at least like 2,000, maybe even 3,000 or so. If the other dudes make 3,000 worth of Ultralisk, that's 6 Ultralisk each, right? Like, that is... we might be able to still beat that with the defensive matrix, but I need to be in a very good position, and it's very scary anyway. Now, I have to admit, guys, it is an absolute freaking pleasure to not be killing a Zerg base right now and not having to worry about freaking Brootlings killing my own siege tanks. Really, it is... I didn't think that that was going to be my biggest enemy, but Brootlings spawning from random evolution chambers and stuff like that, or one freaking Brootlord, that one was more expected, but the random building Brootlords are so freaking annoying, I swear. Like, it's just horrible. Now here we should be able to kill this base pretty fast. So at this point, what I know is there is 4 players still alive, including Purple, who should be out of the game now, exactly. Here I accepted Purple's surrender, and immediately I started to regret it. I was like, what? Like, I kind of just... I couldn't really understand it with the brain cells that I had left after such a long game, you know, the active brain cells, that is. Because it really didn't make sense to me how he was able to make so much money, so I was like, okay, there's no way he has anything left. But then as I accepted his surrender, I was thinking I probably shouldn't have. So there's a couple Zerglings over there. He has a couple Spines. And I know that he has at least 1 or 2 more Queens in the main base. At this point, there are 3 players left. And what we know is that... Are they all Zerg? Yeah, they're all Zerg. So we're going to go up against at least 6 Queens and at least 1 Ultralisk. That is the bare minimum. That's what we know they have. I think it's probably going to be closer to at least 10 queens because the other guys, I don't think have killed their natural queens yet. And here we actually ran into a little bit of a gold mine. You can't see it yet, but there are 5 million workers here. Almost literally. Normally I say literally, and then there's someone in the comments that gets upset at me for saying literally when it's not literally. So I'll say almost literally, okay? That's probably still upsetting. Sorry, Mr. Guy who always writes that in the comments. Also, there was a burrow drone there for some reason. Now I'm gonna siege my tanks here on the low ground. This felt a lot safer, because then the Brootlings aren't gonna get top of my units immediately. Now, sadly, there are a lot of hatcheries to kill. Dude, I'm so scared. I'm watching my tank shoot that right now. You saw me pull back my tanks. I was like, I am not dying to any freaking Brootlings. Now, here we see that the orange Zerg did have the same setup. That's actually pretty cool, by the way. I didn't think about this until now. You guys notice what happened? If you damage the buildings from afar first, the queens will spend all their energy on transfuses before your army gets inside and they attack it. So there, those queens didn't really have any potential to do damage. I mean, with those amount of siege tanks, we would have killed it anyway. But that is a cool way to milk the energy on the queens right away. Now, the orange Zerg did look to have the exact same setup with the 2 spines and the queen. Dude, that was my Goliath. Almost died. I couldn't even see that spine. You guys saw that spine? It's behind a freaking Hydra den. It's in between a Hydra den and a freaking extractor. And a spore. How was I supposed to see that? That's insane. Well, we almost lost the Goliath. Now I'm definitely going to pull the Goliath in the back for the rest of this game. Now I'm going to kill this main building in the hopes that this AI surrenders. It doesn't look like he's going to. And sometimes if they don't surrender after killing the main building, what you have to do is you have to kill the no! Oh man, I thought I actually unsieged those, but dude, I'm getting so panicky watching this. Those tanks were almost one-shot by that one siege tank shot. Like, they were instantly red HP. But what I was gonna say is if you kill the main base and they don't surrender yet, you typically have to kill the defensive structure. So you have to gonna kill either the spines or both the spines and the spores. This once again is extremely scary. There we go. Okay, after I killed a couple of them, he surrendered. I was really afraid. You guys realize what I was afraid of, right? I was afraid that my tanks would have so much damage and it would also kill the evolution chamber, spawning brootlings, probably killing another tank or so. Now we have 2 players left. This surrender, by the way, if you press no on it, it's gonna disappear. And it's not gonna come back. And then you're gonna have to kill literally every single building. So you wanna make sure to keep it open. Right? Also, if you press no on the surrender, what they're gonna do is... Oh, how much damage did that? Oh my god, I didn't think that tank was gonna die, but we lose another Ultralist there. But if you don't press surrender, they're also gonna try to spend all of the money again. So that's one thing that you can do, is just to keep the surrender open. Now, that tank was taking a lot of damage, so I decided to use a D-Matrix. Here, this is about to be the biggest disaster of the game. I siege my tanks and I lose... Well, not quite half of them, but almost half of them. I'm not quite sure if you guys realize what happened. I sieged the tanks, thinking they would target the, what's it called? The defensive structures first, but then my science vessels came into range, revealing the creep tumors. Like, I didn't see them before. I don't even have a scan. My science vessels came close because I wanted to keep them close to my tanks. They revealed the creep tumors, the siege tank shot the creep tumors, and I think I lost... I don't know, you guys are probably going to be able to see it. I think I lost maybe like 4 or 5 tanks or something ridiculous like that. And now I'm left with 10 extremely bruised siege tanks, 2 extremely bruised science vessels, and 1... Well, I mean, it's a barely alive Goliath. It's almost a corpse of a Goliath. I think that thing, it probably has like 8 health or 10 health or something like that. And now we're still gonna have to deal with the broodlings of the hatchery, but we're not gonna have enough tanks to really split our units. Now, once again, if you notice the effect on the hatchery, we are baiting out the transfusions of the queen, so at least the queens are gonna be low HP. And I do have enough energy for D-matrices, which now I'm gonna be using a bit more frequently because I want to make sure that my units don't take any damage from the broodlings. Here, I could have used it as well, but it didn't seem like we were going to take that much damage, and here we go with the D-Matrix. Now, I'm going to siege my tanks because I need to kill the spine crawler. Now, thank goodness spine crawlers don't also spawn brootlings, by the way. Could you guys imagine that? That'd be freaking insane. Now, here what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into the narrow hallway. It is going to be a little while to kill the hatchery, but I just want to make sure that if I'm in this little choke, I can have 1 tank at the front and use defensive matrix on it, not taking unnecessary damage. The sad part is the defensive matrix is not even that good against brootlings because brootlings only deal 1 damage, and every attack deals 1 damage, I believe, to a tank under D-matrix. So notice there, that probably did more damage than like a tank would have done to it, right? Because the broodlings hit, I think, what is it, like 6 or 8? I think it's 6 of them that spawn from a hatchery, all doing 1 damage. Even though it is just 1, it still hurts. Look at the damage on that tank instantly. Like, that's so freaking brutal. Now here, for some reason, I think my brain was so fried, I was just attacking the main base because I was like, okay, I killed all of his hatcheries, he's not surrendering. I didn't even realize the hatchery was literally just staring at me from the right side. I mean, that is not how normal Zerg players play, right? Okay, here I realized there was a hatchery over there. He might have a spine or a spore crawler in the back. It's probably not gonna matter. I think as soon as I kill this hatchery, he is going to GG out. Now, almost lost that siege tank as well. And now there is 1 AI left for me to kill, and it's going to be the blue AI. Perhaps the scariest AI of them all, because the blue AI had Broodlords for this entire game, and that is absolutely freaking terrifying. I do not want to go up against 1 Broodlord. I think no, actually, I can't kill a Broodlord, right? I was talking about how I would kill a Void Ray earlier, and that's with the defensive matrix on the Goliath. At this point, I think the Goliath would be too low HP to do that, because the Broodlord impact, plus the 2 Broodlings every time nibbling at the Goliath, would probably kill it through the defensive matrix, but I still have energy to irradiate the Broodlord as well, which is gonna kill it very slowly. Actually, now I think about it, extremely slowly. because blue is gonna have 2 queens with full transfuses, or 3 queens, which is very annoying. But if he does have a Brood Lord, then we should be able to very slowly kill it with a radiant. We can also kill the queens, of course. Now we killed the queens instantly. It's actually sick. I baited it with the command center. Wait, I thought that one died as well. How did that live? I baited it with the command center, so that was a very efficient way picking off those units. Now, I still, even though I might lose my buildings, I should be able to eliminate the player in time, even if I lose my buildings. So I'm going to fly my buildings in a little bit, just really make sure that there's no hidden unit over there somewhere. I'm going to use my D-Matrix. Sadly for me, I pulled back the wrong tank, so that didn't actually help that much. Here, I can use the D-Matrix to tank the Spine Crawler. We saw that there was another queen on the high ground there, so we're going to have to be careful for that. There's also another Creep Tumor there. Creep Tumors are now my... It is, at this point, I was laughing, because the Creep Tumors earlier did so much damage to me. I was like, the AIs know. They learn so fast. He's now putting Creep Tumors in my face because he knows that is the one way to freaking annihilate me over here. Now this, I made a mistake here and I instantly realized it. I was like, they're going to shoot the larva, aren't they? They shoot the larva and I lose another tank. I swear, guys, these neutral freaking things, or not even neutral, but larva, Creep Tumors, Broodlings, they have been better against me than anything else has been in this entire game. Like, they are so freaking brutal, it's crazy. At this point, I only have 9 tanks left, all absolutely bruised, besides one of them, which is somehow chilling at green health. 1 half that Goliath Corpse and 2 low HP Science Vessels. Now, luckily for me, Spores do not spawn Broodlings. And here, I'm just gonna try to focus down the Spine. I'm gonna shoot the hatchery, but I don't want to kill it with my siege tanks, because then I can unsiege. Sadly for me, I unsiege just too late. These tanks even stronger than I thought, but I still did have a defensive matrix. And let's see, he does have another 2 spines here. Those spines are so freaking sneaky, right? Like, they're actually incredibly sneaky with the spine. Now, there was another queen hiding in the back, so we did actually have freaking 4 queens over there. Now I'm gonna unsheath my tanks again, so I don't bait the Broodlings from that evolution chamber while being sieged. Gonna pull my tanks back so they attack the D-Matrix siege tanks over there. And now I see 2 hatcheries. I'm gonna be able to kill those unsieged pretty easily. I need to make sure that my D-Matrix tank is actually at the front. This Goliath really needs to be careful that it doesn't freaking die. I'm gonna use D-Matrix on the other tank. Even though it's already low HP, it should be able to survive the attacks of those Broodlings. And this should be... Dude, for a second there, I thought my Goliath died. Not quite sure if you guys realized what happened, but I saw an attack alert from the left side, and I thought it was my Goliath dying, but it was actually my command center flying into a Spore Crawler. So thank goodness. That would have actually been basically my last anti-air. So here the Hive dies, and we have officially done it. And what a freaking game it was. I told you guys it was going to be freaking epic, and this was absolutely insane. 46 minutes and 36 seconds. The efficiency was not even that crazy. The green Terran was actually more efficient than me, which is freaking insane. Like, you guys can calculate it. This was about 1 to 7 efficiency rate, which is exactly what you need. 99 kill siege tank. I saw 120 kill siege tank as well. Winning this challenge with 0 minerals in the bank and 24 supply left has to be the closest that we've ever won one of those AI challenge. Looks like the 120 kill siege tank is going to take the cake, and that's going to be it for this video. Hope you guys had a good time enjoying this absolutely crazy, mad, sick crossover challenge. If you did, give a video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all for the next video. Adios.